Okay, video 2 of 3 for this week. So, we're done with exponents. Now we're going to learn about square roots, and then in the last video we're going to do cube roots. So, square roots. 8EE 1.2. I'm assigning this to Wednesday, technically, but you guys work at your own pace. Page 75 if you're still following along with our table of contents system. So, let's do this. Okay, let me zoom in. So, square roots. And I think we talked about this maybe earlier in the year. I know I mentioned it in an exponent video last week, but let's talk about it. So, let's say we have this square, okay, and the area of this square is 36 feet squared. So think about that. How do you find area? How do you find area of a square? Well, you just do length times width, or side times side, because you know that the two sides are the same. It's a square. So side by side equals 36. Some number, so side by side, s times s. What's s times s? Well, s times s is s squared. Okay, we're not adding them, so it's not 2s. So some number times itself equals 36 feet squared. Okay, so you might be like, well, obviously they have to be the same number. So what number times itself is 36? Well, 6, obviously. But let's say it's a big number. It's not easy like 36. And you're tired of just guessing. So what we do then is we take the square root. Okay, square root finds what number times itself equals the other number, the 36. So you take the square root, you put a radical sign on both sides. The radical and the square canceled each other out. So the square root of s squared, that's saying what times itself equals s squared? Well, s times itself equals s squared, so that's s. Okay, well, what number times itself equals 36? We know it's 6. Radical and the square, it's canceled out, so it's 6 feet. So we know the side length equals 6 feet. But if you're tired of having to guess, this button right here, this radical button on your calculator, takes the square root. So 36 square root 6. If you don't have your calculator and you're using a phone calculator, you got to turn it sideways. So then 36, it's the same sign right here. Not the one with the 3 out front. Oh, don't use the one with the y, because that's when you keep changing the number out front. Use the one with the 2, because there's an invisible 2 out front of the radical, because it's a square. So use the one with the 2 out front. 6. So we're using that one right there if you're on your phone calculator. It's right beneath, so it's x squared is right above it. And now it's the square root because it's the inverse. So this one's x cubed, and then the cube root is right beneath it. X to any power, so then any power root underneath it. So we're using this one for square root. Okay, so now let's say we have another example. We have a square. Just pretend it's a square and it's not a rectangle. And the area of this square is, what do I want to do? I had this created and then I changed my mind. Let's say the area of the square is 225 meters squared. And on the question it says, find the side length of each of the square. Well, all you got to do is, we know side times side equals 225. So if side times side equals that, so side squared, s times s, equals 225 meters squared. Well, what number times itself equals 225? Just do the square root. So 225 square root 15, and you can check it. Does 15 times 15 give us an area of 225? Yes, it does. So radical of each side The radical and the square cancel each other out, so that leaves us with the s for side length. So the square root of 225, 15 meters for each side length. Meters times meters is meters squared. So this is where the name square root comes in. We're trying to find the root. The root, the base that when you times it by itself gives us this bigger number. So square root So the square root, it's a number that when multiplied by itself, so this one was, the number multiplied by itself was 6 times 6. This one was 15 times 15. So it's a number that when multiplied by itself equals the bigger number, the given number. So equals like 36, equals 225. Okay. Now there are such things as positive and negative square roots. We're not really going to get into that. But just know when it's just a radical sign, that's basically asking for the positive number. So your answers are all going to be positive for now. When you get in the future, you will say technically the answer could be negative 6 because negative 6 times negative 6 is positive 36. But we're just focusing on positive square roots, especially because side lengths have to be positive. All right, so let's just do some examples now. I have a lot of notes if you hear moving around. So examples. Okay, A. So find the square roots. So example A, square root of 36. Okay, well we already did that. So what number times itself equals 36? 6. Guys, you're allowed to use a calculator. So you literally, let your brain do some work, but 36 square root, 6. Okay, let's say it's the square root, so radical 121. What number times itself is 121? 11. And these are all perfect squares. What does that mean, perfect squares? It means we got whole numbers. They're beautiful, okay? Like, we're not giving you ugly answers right now. So if they come out as a whole number, then that's a perfect square. Because 11 squared is 121. 6 squared, 6 to the x1 and f2 is 36. Now, sometimes you're going to see it with fractions. And this is what I kind of hinted at in a video last week, if you saw that. So find the square root of 25 over 169. Okay, so all you do, guys, separate it. This is just saying, what's the square root of 25? What's the square root of 169? You can't type this in your calculator and then just do square root, because it's going to give you a decimal, and we don't want that. We want it as a fraction. So you have to separate it. This is the same as the square root of 25 divided by the square root of 169. So what's the square root of 25? What number times itself is 25? Hopefully you realized it was 5. Okay. What number times itself is 169? 13. So the square root of 25 over 169 is 5/13. Let's try another one. You guys try this one and then come back to the video. So find the square root of 225 divided by 196, just like we just did. So pause the video and try to solve this one. So first we got to separate it. Square root of 225 divided by the square root of 196. Well, the square root of 225 is 15. And the square root of 196, so what number times itself is 196? 14. So 15/14. Okay, sometimes they're not going to be beautiful, perfect square answers. Sometimes there'll be decimals underneath, and that's okay. What's the square root of 1.69? 1 and 69 hundredths. You can use your calculator. It'll tell you at 1.69. We don't expect you just to know this in your head, okay? What number times itself is 1.69? 1.3. Now, that might actually make sense to you if you think about it, okay? We want you guys to have number sense. Make it make sense. If you remove the decimal, 169, the square root of 169, was 13. So that makes sense why it's 1.3, 1 and 3/10. All right, this one you guys try. Find the square root of 3.24. And yes, there's a negative sign out front. That just means times it by the negative. It's just like when we did it with squares, like the exponents. So, you don't need to type the negative out front. Just do 3.24 square to 1.8, and then you just add the negative. So it's negative 1.8. Now sometimes you'll have it with a number out front. So that means the square root of 49 is being multiplied by 3. And then we want you to add 2 to that. So try to do this one. Try to think, what is that going to be? What is that going to equal? Okay, well, what's the square root of 49? What number times itself is 49? 7. And you can check it. So 3 times 7. 3 times the square root of 49. 3 times 7 plus 2. So 3 times 7, 21, plus 2, it's just 23. I'm about to sneeze. Phew, God bless me. Okay. The last one I want to show you, and then it's going to reveal a rule that we're about to learn, is what if we find the square root of 81 squared? So you might be able to already predict this based on our beginning examples with the squares. So first, let's just do the square root of 81. Okay, what's the square root of 81? Well, 9 times 9 is 81. Okay, but we still have that exponent. We still have that squared. What's 9 squared? What's 9 times 9? 81. So right here, this proves that basically the radical and the square cancel each other out. Okay, it just left us with the number underneath the radical. That's called the radicand. It just left us with 81, the radicand. So that rule basically is, like, if you have a squared, it just equals a. Why is this green pen not working? So the radical and the square cancel each other out and just leave you with the A. Just leave you with the radicand. Okay, I want to do one more example and then we're going to be done. I want to do a word problem. I thought about not doing it because distance learning, but you know what? No, I think it's good for you guys just to see. So we have area of a circle, and I'm not going to write it in full sentences since we're not in class. So we have an area of a circle equals 2,826 feet squared. So I want us to find the radius of the circle. So remember, we got our circle. Okay, the area, that's if we're coloring it in. The radius is from the center to the edge. The diameter goes all the way. So let's, major throwback, what's area of a circle formula? Okay, area equals, I wonder if you guys remember it. Is it pi r squared or is it pi d? Area, pi r squared. Pi d is for the circumference, the distance around. So area equals pi r squared. And they told us that the area of the circle is 2,826. So we can put this and substitute it for A, area, because that's the area of the circle. So 2,826 equals pi r squared. Well, we know what pi is. It's 3.14. So let's substitute that in. So 2,826, the area equals pi 3.14 r squared. Okay. Now this kind of just looks like a one or two step equation. Let's box up our variable, ignore that it has a squared, and draw our line. These are touching, they're being multiplied. How do we undo multiplication? Division. Divide both sides by 3.14. Well, 3.14 divided by 3.14 is 1. It just leaves us with r squared. And then we'll do 2,826 divided by 3.14 equals 900. So the radius is 900, right? No. Radius squared is 900. So what number times itself is 900? Well, we just want the radius. We don't want radius squared. So that's when you take the radical of each side, the square root of each side. So remember, the square root, the radical sign, and the square cancel out. It just leaves us with r. So now we have to take the square root of 900. 30. So that means the radius is 30. And you can check it. Pi r squared. So pi 3.14 times 30 squared equals 2,826, which was the area. Technically, because we're taking the square root of a variable squared, the answer is 30 and negative 30, because negative 30 times negative 30 is 900, but you can't have a negative radius. So for now, we're just talking about positive exponents. Now these videos are a lot harder than what you're doing on Khan Academy, but I don't want to slack the content, just because I think it's important for you guys to see.